So without further ado, please help me welcome Anita.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How many people here already have their CIPS designation? Me too. Okay, good. Well, technically I don't. I don't have a NERDS number because I'm not a realtor, but I did the whole course. I got 100%. Stick with David and Patsy White. I believe they'll be back here with you guys again this year. So even if you've never worked with an international client, you deal with people on an international basis every day. It's the best background information. It has served me well in business. So I would highly recommend that everybody get their CIPS designation. It is an R designation. Anyways, thank you so much for having me as your speaker today. And I do want to kind of give you some background on what currency exchange is, why it's important for you to understand it, because it can make the difference between something closing or not closing when things don't turn out to be what people thought they were going to be because they misunderstood the role that the currency exchange plays in the first place. So, the foreign exchange market, first of all, is the largest exchange market in the world. More than $5 trillion are traded on a daily basis in the world. It never stops. It just rolls, from region to region. So, although it's technically only, works during the 5 business days, tonight we're sleeping, it's already tomorrow somewhere else in the world. So, it really never stops. It just rolls around the world. So, that makes it basically something that you cannot ignore when you are dealing with real estate. So the foreign exchange market is a very volatile market. You blink and something upsets the balance between what currencies are trading for from country to country. So things like inflation, that's a little bit more slow moving. Interest rates, they can change overnight. Basically a quarter point interest rate change in one country or another kind of puts the economy in that country into a tizzy for a short while, and that affects stability of the market and therefore the currency rates. Credit ratings of a country, not a person, but a country, also affects the rates that the currencies will be changing at. Natural disasters, when there's hurricanes, when there's earthquakes, it puts the local economies under extreme pressure, and that in turn affects the currency exchange rates. International trade, who's trading with whom? Is NAFTA staying? Is NAFTA going? Is TPP staying? Is it going? Who's participating? All those things will affect currency exchange rates. And then unexpected events such as Brexit. Whoever thought that was going to pass? I actually had a client waiting to change her GBP, her Great Britain pounds, into dollars to purchase a property in Chicago. Literally, we got it done at like 4:30, locked it in the night before the Brexit vote. And had we not gotten it done that day, and I was on vacation in Spain, but we knew what was at stake, it would have cost her 20% more to close on her place in Chicago. In other words, she would have lost the property. So this is why you need to understand this stuff. So many things affect the volatility, are affected by the volatility. So cost of products, materials, and services, you're building a house, you're importing something, that's going to affect it. Assets and businesses held overseas, maybe that's somebody's seed money to turn around and buy something here in the United States, whether it's for investment purposes, to live in, for their kids to live in while they're going to college here. If you have an international business where revenue is being sent across the borders, that's going to make a big difference. The more you exchange and the more often you exchange, the more important it is to be able to control the risk of those exchanges. And then your overall profit margin. So, people will argue over 1%, 1% on a commission, or 1% increase in a price, or 1% decrease in a price. So why is it that nobody thinks about the fact that when you're exchanging through a bank, most of the time you're paying between 1% and 8% more for your money? That's a huge, you have to think of it as an investment or a loss. So those things do matter. Now, what you see is not what you get when it comes to exchange rates. So what most people do, if they want to find out what the rate is today, say the Thai baht and the US dollar, they'll Google, or let's say Australian dollar, they'll Google AUD USD or USD AUD, not understanding that the order you put it in very much affects what you're going to see. But at any rate, if you just put in the currency pairs, anybody ever done that? You just Google like USD, CAD, whatever it is. Yeah, okay. So what you get is not the actual rate. What you're going to see when you do that is, in fact, the interbank rate. And that is the rate that the banks give each other, hence the name interbank. It is never the rate that you, the consumer, I, the consumer, any of us are ever going to see. That's simply the rates that the banks give each other. The Bank of China gives, the Bank of Canada gives Bank of America, whatever it is, like that. So you're going to end up on a site which is streaming. And so you notice on the right-hand corner there, you see everything is logged by seconds, okay? Because the exchange rate changes on a second-by-second basis. So when you see this, in this case, it was euros to US dollars, and at that moment in time, it was like you got like $1.25 and change for €1. So that's lovely. And now you think, great, okay, I've got 10,000 euros, I'm gonna exchange, I should get about $12,552, whatever. I'm a happy camper. But then you walk into your bank, wherever it is. I always run my numbers, I compare them to Wells Fargo and eBay, because that happens to be where I have my 2 accounts. But it doesn't matter where you go. Not all banks do currency exchange. Not all banks do all currencies in their currency exchange. But at any rate, you walk into your bank thinking that you're going to get 12,500 and change, and in fact, you're only going to get about 11,800 whatever, because the rate they're giving you is $1.18 and change, not $1.25 and change. And therein lies the difference between the interbank rate and the consumer rate. Okay, that's a huge difference. So, in this case, it was a 5.4% difference. If you multiply that, okay, there is the listing for 3.3 mil. 5.4% of 3.3 mil, how much more money does that person have to bring to the closing table? Is that a big difference? Humongous. So that's why it matters. Especially in California, we don't have low price property. We have comparatively lower price in some areas than others, but compared to the rest of the United States, we're off the charts. So it matters. Now, here's how you read the currency pairs. Okay, the first currency in the pair is always going to be the base currency. That always has a value of 1. You have to have an anchor. You have to know what you're comparing to. So, in this case, USD to Japanese yen, meaning $1 US, because the first one's always going to be 1, is worth 123.73 Japanese yen. And this was back in 2014, I think I did it, but it doesn't matter. Whatever it is today, it doesn't matter. It's still the same. It's still the same procedure. The one to the right is the quote currency. That's what you want to find out how many you're going to get of. Correct? So USD to Japanese yen, 123 means $1 gets you 123 and change Japanese yen. When it's the reverse, like Australian dollars to US dollars, 1 Aussie dollar gets you about 77 cents and change in US dollars. So now you don't have to be confused when you're looking at what you're getting, when you're putting the currency pairs in, and you'll make sure to do it in the right order because you want to know what it is you're getting. All right, now, the foreign exchange market, there's a reason why there's a difference between the interbank rate and the consumer rate, and that's because there's a whole lot of stuff that has to go on in the background in order to get that money into your client's bank account, into your bank account. Whoever is doing the exchange is going from point A to point B, and a lot has to happen in between those 2 points. So, included in the rates that consumers pay are, number 1, the interbank rate. Number 2, there's a safety margin, because it's like Las Vegas, house never loses. So, you ever walked into your bank and you see that now it's lovely, it's on flat screens, and they show, oh, we do currency exchange, here's what the rates are today, and they have a buy and a sell rate and all that stuff, and that's always kind of confusing. But what you're going to see is that if you walk into your bank and they have a daily rate up there, knowing that this is done on a second-by-second basis, you pretty much know you're in trouble, because they've already built in enough of a cushion so no matter which way the market goes, they will not lose. Okay, they might make more money, but they're not going to make less money. They're never going to lose money, because unless something so catastrophic happens that something changes, in which case they'll probably shut down the trading anyways. Then there's going to be commission on there. They're not going to include their cushion, their commission with their cushion. One has nothing to do with the other. So in addition to the cushion they build in, they have the margin they want to make. They have their commission. There's a commission built in. And then there might be an intermediary bank cost or exchange cost. So for example, the company I represent, Associated Foreign Exchange, we have our own trade platform and compliance department. A lot of banks, especially smaller banks, like Citibank, not Citibanks, banks that are like small regional banks, And credit unions, a lot of them don't have trade facilities, so therefore they have to get their transfers done through another organization, and a lot of times we're it. So in addition to whatever it is they're going to charge, there could be a third-party facilitator fee built in. So you can see there's a lot of things that do go into trading. And then separate from that, you've got your fees, and those are transfer fees. They have nothing to do with the actual transfers. So some banks may, in fact, give free wire transfers, or their selling point might be they charge less. You know, if you're sending $1 million across the border, you know, they're lowering the rate from $80 to $50, well, that's very sweet, but at the scheme of things, don't think for a second you're not paying, you know, top dollar for the actual exchange itself. So I've seen average foreign wire transfer fees between 40 and 50. People sometimes send USD to USD in foreign countries. Anybody who's importing from China, mostly Chinese manufacturers, want to be paid in US dollars. So banks here are sending US dollars to US dollar accounts in China, and the most I've seen for that is an $80 wire transfer fee. So I had a client who was ordering samples from a manufacturer in China. The samples cost $200, and it cost $80 to send the money. So that was kind of insane. And then receiving wire transfer fees vary from 12 to 25. They could very well be more. This slide is about 3-4 years old now. But bottom line is that those are annoying fees. Some banks charge you fees just to send an email to the beneficiary, i.e. the person who's going to receive the transfer, to let them know that the transfer has been initiated. So there's a number of ways you could be nickel and dime to death. And it all goes into the overall cost. Now, there is a very real cost to the compliance part of money transferring, and it has evolved over time. This is pretty much what it looks like. It's very, very paper intensive, or in these days electronically intensive. However, everybody has to do the same due diligence, whether it's a bank, whether it's AFIX, doesn't matter. Everybody does the same due diligence. And so it's very, very HR intensive. And if it's HR intensive, it means you're paying somebody's salary to do it. So as far as the banks go, that's another thing that adds to the cost a lot more than it does a company like AFIX, because it's all we do. So it's kind of, we contain that. So here you can kind of see how how all the regulations have kind of emerged. So in 1990, FinCEN, which is Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, was created. Anti-money laundering, the counter-terrorist financing, things to try and control those issues. That added paperwork, it added compliance, it added verification responsibilities on the part of compliance. Then we have the Patriot Act following 9/11. It has 10 titles, and just so you understand how intense and immense these things are, the short version is 417 pages of one title. And you all know, you're all familiar with KYC, because every house you sell, 99% of the time, there's going to be a mortgage on that. Your client has to get approved, or the buyer's client, the buyer broker's client has to get approved. So somebody is going to be dealing with KYC. Then we have Dodd-Frank Wall Street regulations, which came about around 2010, following the whole financial industry meltdown. And it still has not finished unfurling its little tentacles. It's 848 pages long, and it does, in fact, have a lot to do with currency transaction reports and things of that sort. So all of you know anything over 10,000 gets reported, and a couple of years ago they started really digging in. If you have, on a personal level, 10,000 or more in a bank in a foreign country, you do have to declare that. They let it slide for a long time, and then they started finding people on a big time basis. So all these things affect everybody. So how does this really, what does it mean in dollars and cents when it comes to buying? Now, I'm going to be talking to people sending money here, but I understand that this applies to people buying in other countries. How many of you have listings in other countries? No one? Okay, well, you should. It's a great way to make money, especially if you're partnering with somebody else, another member of NAR, or the whole network, the NAR family, which extends through most of the countries in the world. You can be getting paid a commission while somebody else is doing the work by simply referring a client to them, to the real estate person that you trust over there, your client that you love over here, and someone's going to have to send money, and you should be a resource for them. So that's really what we're talking about here. So this is an example of a Canadian client buying a property in Miami. Where else? And it was an all-cash deal, which means it was going to close in 30 days. By the time I was brought in on this deal, there were no, I don't even think there were contingencies, but if there were, they were already, you know, they were already removed. It was a cash deal, obviously, because a Canadian bank will not lend on a U.S. property, and a U.S. bank would not lend to the Canadian national. There's a little bit more flexibility these days, but especially if somebody already has property here, so the second property is pretty easy, but in those days it was not quite so easy. So at any rate, this is what it looked like. It was about a $500,000 sale, and the exchange rate when met up with this person was actually pretty favorable for what it was in those days, and it was like 93.77 cents to the US dollar, which would have made her cost in Canadian dollars $533 and $533,220,000. And we suggested, wow, you know, the rate is pretty favorable right now. Why don't you go ahead and buy your US dollars now? You do not have to send them to escrow yet, but we haven't seen the rate this good in a while, and who knows when it'll be this good. And the reason we knew that is because the minute the account gets set up, everybody gets their own dedicated account manager. They are watching the currency pairs, they've got your back, so they know what your goals are, and they're there to help you. And she said, oh, I can't be bothered, we're closing in 2 weeks, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that on the day she went to wire her money to escrow, it was less favorable. And you might say, okay, 93.7 cents, 91.1, big deal, we're talking pennies. Well, yeah, but remember, you're multiplying that by hundreds and thousands of dollars. So basically, it was a 3% difference, and that ended up costing her an extra 15,508 Canadian dollars, which translated at that point in time to $14,400. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty nice kitchen remodel or bathroom remodel. And that's money that should have been in her pocket, which now went to the world. I speak at a lot of CFBS classes all over, and Silver is one of them. Hopefully I'll be here next time David and Pat are here. But we had a UK client from a realtor up in Silicon Valley, bringing money in to the US. And same thing happened. Her bank was charging her 8% more. Huge, huge, huge difference, plus transfer fees in both directions. So we waive the foreign wire, incoming foreign wire transfer fees if our client is receiving here in the US. If our client is sending, then we waive the outgoing. So if you're sending from yourself, you're going to pay in one direction, but you're not going to pay in the direction that we're actually handling. And again, it may be pennies on the dollars in the scheme of things, but it's highly annoying when you see how many fees you're being charged by the bank. So we were able to save her money, no receiving fees, and in fact, her savings was about $8,000 in US. So again, that's a very nice chunk of change to save. Had another client who was selling his mom's house in France, actually bringing her and the money back to the US. She was too old to keep on living by herself. And the day that he was introduced to me, he had just sent a small deposit in, and so he did the exchange through his bank, so we know exactly what he paid. His bank was giving him $1.05 for each euro, and our price to him was $1.09. So 3.8 savings, that made a lot of difference. It wasn't a huge, huge transfer, but it's his money. It was a lot of money to him. So you know, we saved him almost $5,000 on the rest of his transfers. So it's important to know that you can mitigate the risk of the currency exchange rates fluctuating, and that's really what you have to do. Otherwise, it's like a moving target. How do you know? You walk into the market every day, okay, so they may raise or lower the price of milk or butter or whatever, you know, by a few cents, but what if everything, you know, the biggest purchase of your life was a moving target in terms of what it's going to cost you? How do you know? So you want to mitigate the risk. And so first of all, you want to purchase your currency, or your clients want to purchase their currency when the rates are favorable. And or they can actually do what's called a forward contract and lock in the rates for up to a year, which means they commit to X amount. And of course, you want to do it when the rates are favorable. But if they're great now, we haven't seen them that high or that good in 4 years, and you're buying in 3 months, and you're committed to buying, you know, no matter what, might be a pretty good idea to lock in those rates. And then also, let's say, a person buys a property here, well, there's still other things are gonna go on if they're really a resident or if their primary residence is somewhere else and they're buying here, they may have to furnish the place. They may have HOA dues, they're gonna have property taxes, they're gonna have insurance taxes, maybe their kids are living in the house while they're going to college, and they have living expenses as well. So there may, still be ongoing transfers over time, and or maybe they're working in both places and sending money back and forth. So one of the great things is that you can actually, our clients are allowed to use our holding accounts. That's 40 different accounts throughout the world, so that they never have to keep changing one currency back into a base currency every time they want to turn around and then send it out and make a payment, maybe in the same currency that they received it in. So that's a huge benefit. And also, has anybody tried to open a bank account in a foreign country recently? No? Okay, let me tell you, it's darn hard. First of all, because nobody wants to deal with US reporting requirements, so they're just simply not opening accounts for US citizens. And foreigners coming here, you have to have brick and mortar, feet on the street, you've got to have a permanent residence, you've got to have a telephone, account in your name, you've got to have a social security number or an FEIN, a federal employer identification number if you own your own company or you have a DBA or something like that. You just can't go anywhere in the world anymore and just say, oh, I want to open a bank account. And that's all part of the anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism regulations. So by allowing people and companies to use our holding accounts, basically they can now do business and purchase properties in places where they would not have been able to have a bank account before to do so because they had no way of opening it up. I had a client who just bought a flat in France, and you have to have a bank account there in order to pay your utilities. So he bought this property, the sellers agreed to keep the electricity on for a while, but he was down to the wire in terms of opening a bank account because without that, no more utilities. No more utilities, can't rent out the property. So it is a huge, huge deal. So being able to use holding accounts is very important. And then you want to work with somebody who knows what you're doing, what your goals are, and has your back. So pretty much everything that I already mentioned here. Flexibility, our clients have access to our online portal. So you forgot to pay your HOA dues in London, your flat in London, and it's 1 in the morning, boom, if it's in by the deadline, it goes the same day, you can now make a payment. So that's really nice. Now, we work really, really closely with realtors. We love realtors. We love referrals from realtors. So just so you know, and hopefully I'll be able to get everybody's email addresses, and you all have my email and everything on the information I handed out. We do pay referral fees. It does not violate RESPA, just so you know up front. And we do offer a 10% commission on our net spread to anybody who sends us a client. So the first step is, of course, to get yourselves signed up. So email me, and I will try and email you, and I'll get you the application so you can become a referral partner. It's for you. It has nothing to do with your broker. Brokers can do this as well, but this is as an individual. And again, this is very much in the spirit of RESPA, where we are trying to save your client's money. But again, it is outside of the actual settlement process, so it has nothing to do with that. And we're always here to help you with anything you need. I want to throw a couple other tools at you real quick that will help you in the world of international real estate. And also domestic, as a matter of fact. So I offer a special type of international finance. It's called a securities-based loan. It's a line of credit against a stock portfolio. And we will work with stocks that are on most of the Western European exchanges, Mexico, US, Canada, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and a number of other countries. So it allows people who have their money and assets held outside the US to collateralize those and then turn around and buy a property here in the US. So it turns out it's going to be your best friend. We don't care about FICOs, we don't care about nationality, we don't care about legal status, we don't care if you have a job. None of that lives in our world for this type of lending. We're simply collateralizing the stock. That's all we care about. The money can be used for anything. So that will be a great tool for you with your clients. You just have to clarify, first of all, if the money is held in an account that's not tied into a retirement account, because we can't work with retirement accounts. And then the other thing I want to let you know about, also totally unrelated to Associated Foreign Exchange, is I do have access to a special program. Anybody here have problems with their clients trying to bring money out of China? Okay, yeah. So the limit there is $50,000 US per person per year. AFEX can bring out any amount. We don't care. The limit is on the China side as to how much they let them send out. So totally apart from that, I do have access to a trader that does have permission to bring out large sums of money from China. It is only for personal use, not for business, and the minimum is 1 million. So if anybody has clients for whom they feel that would be useful, make sure that you reach out to me. And I think I have about 6 minutes left for questions. So if anybody has questions, fire away. Or no? No? Yes?
With this foreign exchange, based on sometime, I know it's a percentage of the rate, but does it have something to do with the volume or the amount of fees it is going to be?
So the rate, yeah, to a small degree, we give all of our clients preferential rates. That's not always the case with other, like with banks and things of that sort. So all of our clients get preferential rates from the get-go. But yes, if you're doing $1 million exchange versus $1,000, it will be slightly better, most definitely. But it's still going to be fantastic to start with. Yeah.
Can you also give us an example? For example, I have a client who wants to exchange 1 million. They want $1 million US here. Can you please give us an estimate how much fee is?
I cannot. What are they're trying to bring? Are they bringing it into the United States?
Into the United States.
From where?
$1 million US.
But from where?
From China.
From China.
Yeah.
The trader does that. I don't ever quote. I can't possibly tell you what that would be.
Usually we call you for quote, or do we?
So if it's for China, you're going to need to call me. The client has to go through due diligence. This is a very specific program, and we do all the due diligence on the clients up front before they're put through to the actual trader. Yeah, that's totally different with AFEX. AFEX, they fill out an application with me, and it goes right away to compliance and much easier.
One more question.
Sure.
What's the percentage of your clients, as far as the nationality is concerned? I mean, China. Is that like a ratio? How much ratio?
So a lot of my dealings with China are actually for, ironically, businesses here in the States that are doing business with China. So I have like attorneys who deal a lot with China and intellectual property in China, and they want to allow their clients in China to pay the local currency because it is it's hard for them to get the dollars or the CNH as well. So we facilitate our client being able to allow their client to pay in the local currency, and then we handle the risk on our side here because we're able to fix, lock in the rates so that there's no guessing as to what it would be. But my clients come from all over because I speak at a lot of CIPS classes. I deal a lot with importers and exporters, so it runs the gamut. It's yeah. And now there are some currencies that we don't deal in. Incoming is always more restricted than outgoing. Outgoing, we can do any currency that's not on the Treasury no-fly list. In other words, a country that's being sanctioned, so we're not sending to Iraq or Iran anytime soon. On the incoming basis, of course, we're limited by those on the no-fly list of the Treasury, but there's additional restrictions, and those are strictly corporate decisions based on liquidity. So while we can do incoming Chinese, no problem. For example, we don't do incoming from Malaysia, I'm really sorry. We can do outgoing to Malaysia, we can outgoing to Philippines, we don't do incoming Philippines. So different currencies have different limitations, but we're still gonna be able to do a lot more than pretty much anybody out there. Any other questions? Yes?
Why is there a difference between banks being able to lend a maximum of 50 and you are able to do $1 million? Do you also do Mexico?
Yeah, we can do both directions. So, because the program that I have for doing the million has nothing, it's circumventing the Chinese restrictions. Because our trader happens to have a relationship with the government that has said, okay, under certain circumstances, individuals can bring out. Otherwise, everybody else has to go through the same, has the same restrictions. That hasn't changed anything. This is just a way to legally circumvent that restriction. but it's not related to AFEX, because AFEX has no limits on how much we can bring in. It's the Chinese side that has the limit as to how much they can send out. Good deal. All right, well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.